My name is Rachel Donovan. I am 42 years old and a former biblical studies professor at a small Christian college in Minnesota. 6 months ago, I died for 27 minutes, and during that time, Jesus revealed why the Book of Jubilees was removed from the Bible and how its divine knowledge was kept hidden from believers. What I discovered about time, sacred laws, and cosmic order altered my perception of God's plan for humanity. What I saw is time-sensitive, and it needs to be told right away because it changes everything about our lives. The result is the shocking testimony of what was concealed and why it is relevant today. But before we begin, please tell me where you're listening. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we are physically separated. Furthermore, remember to like and comment on what you thought of this near-death experience testimony. Make this channel a fair and open forum for learning from each other. Enjoy listening. It occurred on August 17, 2024. I'd had an irregular heartbeat, known as atrial fibrillation, since I was in my 30s and had managed it with medication. The winter morning began like any other. I was grading final papers in my home office when I felt an unusual pressure in my chest. At first, I dismissed it, blaming it on holiday stress or possibly the extra coffee I'd had that morning. However, within minutes, the pressure turned into crushing pain that spread down my left arm. I remember reaching for my phone and fumbling with the screen as my vision blurred. I managed to call 911 before collapsing on the floor. The last thing I heard was my golden retriever, Moses, barking furiously as my consciousness faded to black. What happened next would forever change my understanding of Scripture and explain why certain texts, particularly the Book of Jubilees, were purposefully excluded from the canonical Bible. When my heart stopped, I did not immediately leave my body, as some near-death experiences suggest. Instead, there was a moment of complete silence, a transition between worlds. Then I felt myself drawn upward, passing through layers of reality. Physical sensations faded, giving way to a profound awareness that extended beyond my 5 senses. I emerged into an expanse of light so pure that it should have blinded me, but I could see everything perfectly. In this light stood Jesus Christ. I recognized him right away, even though he didn't resemble the paintings and illustrations I'd seen throughout my life. His presence exuded authority and kindness at the same time, a divine majesty balanced with compassion that made me feel completely known while also unconditionally loved. "Rachel," he said, "you have studied my word faithfully, but there are truths you haven't yet understood, knowledge that was purposefully kept for my followers." I was speechless, overwhelmed by his presence. "You're familiar with the Bible as it exists today," he continued. "But do you know what's missing? Do you understand why certain books were excluded?" Before I could respond, Jesus touched one of the scrolls, and it unfolded into a luminous text I somehow knew was the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees contains divine truths about creation, my laws, and the cosmic order that religious AUT. Today I will show you why this book was banned from most Christian Bibles, and what that means for believers. Jesus then began revealing the hidden knowledge contained in the Book of Jubilees, beginning with its revolutionary view of sacred time. In Jubilees, he stated that time itself is divine, created with purpose and structure. The solar calendar of 364 days revealed in Jubilees was more than just a way to count days. It was a divine plan for synchronizing human life with heavenly cycles. Jesus showed me how this perfect calendar was made up of exactly 52 weeks, 4 seasons of 13 weeks each, and each season had exactly 91 days. This structure ensured that sacred days, such as the Sabbath and festivals, fell on the same date every year. This pattern is not a coincidence, Jesus explained. It was purposefully created to connect heaven and earth, allowing humanity to live in accordance with divine rhythms. However, this knowledge was suppressed because it contradicted the lunar calendars that religious leaders had adopted from neighboring cultures. Jesus revealed that angels were created on the first day of creation, before the world existed. God assigned specific duties to these angels, with some overseeing natural phenomena such as the movement of the heavens and others serving as messengers and guardians of God's laws. Jesus explained that angels do more than just watch over humanity. Angels have the power to shape the course of time. When humans fail to align with God's timing, chaos ensues. This theme is central to Jubilees, but it was deemed too threatening by religious authorities who sought to control how people observed holy days. Jesus explained that one of the most contentious aspects of the Book of Jubilees was its insistence that the world use a solar calendar rather than the lunar calendar that many ancient cultures, including the Israelites, eventually adopted. Jubilees went on to say that the solar calendar is the only correct way to measure time, because it perfectly corresponds to God's divine order. When this system was abandoned, humanity became out of sync with the heavenly rhythms. Jesus showed me how this solar calendar is strikingly similar to the Ethiopian calendar that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church still uses today. He explained that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church did not include the Book of Jubilees in their Bible by accident. They recognized its significance in maintaining contact with divine time. According to Jesus, this divine order was corrupted by the lunar calendar. The lunar calendar's irregularity causes months and festivals to shift over time, resulting in spiritual disorder. Jubilees warns that following the lunar calendar is more than just a mistake. It is a form of disobedience to God's will, Jesus said, showing me a passage that stated, "There will be those who will undoubtedly observe the moon, but they will disrupt the seasons and make an abominable day the day of testimony." Jesus then explained how the Book of Jubilees reaffirms the traditional six-day creation narrative, while going into greater detail about the first Sabbath. According to Jubilees, God did not simply rest on the seventh day. He sanctified it as a divine institution, an eternal law applicable to both humans and angels. The Sabbath is more than just a day of rest, Jesus explained. It is a cosmic principle that governs the weekly cycle and is related to the larger structure of time, such as the 49-year Jubilee cycles. These cycles, he explained, were intended to restore the world's balance with God's order by providing a period of rest, release, and renewal for the land, people, and even the angelic realm. As our conversation progressed, Jesus revealed that Jubilees states that after creating Adam, God immediately gave him specific commandments, which included Sabbath observance, purity laws, and marriage and worship rules. These laws, Jesus said, were delivered by angels and must be followed by Adam and his descendants as part of God's covenant with humanity from the beginning. Jesus explained that, while Genesis mentions God's direct interactions with Adam, Jubilees introduces angelic beings as mediators who teach Adam how to obey God's commands. These angels, particularly the angels of presence, make certain that Adam and Eve understand the laws of holiness, sacrifice, and moral behavior. According to Jesus, the angelic interaction reinforced the fact that God's law is a part of the heavenly order, rather than a mere human invention. The angels taught Adam that he must follow God's laws as an eternal covenant, just as they do in the heavenly realm. Jesus demonstrated to me that according to Jubilees, God's laws were given to humans long before Moses received the 10 Commandments. These ancient commandments contain detailed instructions for worship, morality, and living in accordance with divine principles. Moving through sacred history, Jesus explained how Jubilees provides additional information about Cain and Abel. While Genesis states that Cain murdered Abel, the Book of Jubilees portrays this incident as the first major violation of God's law, a sin with spiritual ramifications for all of humanity. However, while Cain is expelled, Jesus explained, Jubilees emphasizes that the righteous line of humanity continues through Seth, Adam's third son, who is portrayed as a figure of righteousness who is taught to obey the laws handed down by the angels. Jesus then showed me how Jubilees provides additional information about Noah and the flood. Before the flood, Jubilees delves deeper into the corruption of the earth, with a particular emphasis on the Nephilim, the offspring of fallen angels and human women. While Genesis briefly mentions the Nephilim, Jesus stated that Jubilees provides more context, demonstrating how these giants contributed to the wickedness that prompted God to cleanse the earth with the flood. Jesus revealed that moral decay was caused not only by human sin, but also by fallen angels who created forbidden knowledge and corrupted the natural order. Following the flood, Jesus continued, Jubilees reveals that God established a new covenant with Noah, which included specific laws of purity and sacrifice. Noah was told to keep the Sabbath and adhere to the same sacrifice and purity laws as Adam. As we progress through the biblical timeline, Jesus showed me how Jubilees takes us further back into Abraham's youth than Genesis, revealing that Abraham grew up in an idolatry-filled family. According to Jesus, Genesis makes no mention of this, but Jubilees paints a vivid picture of a young Abraham rejecting pagan practices in his surroundings in favor of following the one true God. Jesus showed me a scene from Abraham's youth in which he confronted his father about idol worship, saying, "My father, what is this idol you worship?" When his father couldn't provide an adequate response, Abraham burned the idols and fled into the wilderness. While Genesis emphasizes Abraham's obedience to God's call to leave his home, Jesus explained that Jubilees portrays Abraham as a revolutionary figure who took a bold stand against the idolatry of his day. One of the most striking distinctions Jesus made was that, according to Jubilees, Abraham followed divine laws long before Moses was born. In Genesis, there is no mention of Abraham being given laws apart from the covenant of circumcision, but in Jubilees, Abraham is depicted as having already observed the Sabbath, made sacrifices, and followed other laws associated with Moses. According to Jubilees, Jesus stated that these laws were passed down from the angels to the patriarchs, beginning with Adam, rather than being invented during the time of Moses. Abraham received these commandments from angels as part of his covenant with God. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays Abraham as part of a cosmic plan, guided by angels and adhering to divine laws that govern both heaven and earth. When we got to the covenant of circumcision, Jesus explained that according to Jubilees, it was more than just a symbolic act. It was part of a cosmic law written on heavenly tablets. Circumcision was more than just a symbol for Abraham's descendants, Jesus explained. It was a divine law that had existed since the beginning of the world, inscribed on the heavenly tablets that contained all of the laws governing both angels and humans. Moving on to the story of Isaac's binding, Jesus demonstrated how Jubilees enhances this powerful narrative. In Jubilees, the test is not only between Abraham and God, it is part of a larger spiritual battle. According to Jubilees, Jesus revealed that the angel Mastema, a figure associated with Satan, proposed this test to God, hoping Abraham would fail. Mastema represents the forces of evil, which are constantly working to undermine the righteous. Jesus showed me how, according to Jubilees, angels intervened during the binding, and God allowed the test to demonstrate that Abraham's faith was stronger than evil temptations. According to Jesus, this story from Jubilees introduces a whole new level of spiritual significance. It's more than just a test of Abraham's obedience. It's part of the cosmic struggle between good and evil. As we progress through the patriarchal narratives, Jesus explained how Jubilees expands on the prophecy about Jacob and Esau. While Genesis states that God revealed to Rebekah that the older would serve the younger, Jubilees emphasizes that the dispute was not simply a family feud. It was part of a cosmic plan in which Jacob was always meant to inherit the blessing and carry on the line of righteousness. Jubilees adds a layer of predestination, Jesus explained, revealing that Jacob was chosen from birth to carry on the covenant, whereas Esau was doomed to deviate from God's plan. Jesus showed me how Jubilees depicts Esau as more than just a brother who has lost his birthright. In Jubilees, Esau represents a line of rebellion against God's chosen people, with his descendants depicted as a nation opposed to Jacob's line. This is part of the larger cosmic conflict that Jubilees emphasizes, Jesus explained. Jacob and Israel represent righteousness, while Esau and Edom represent rebellion. According to Jubilees, one of the most significant moments in Jacob's life is when he receives not only his father Isaac's blessing, but also a continuation of the divine laws passed down from Abraham. According to Jubilees, after Jacob receives the blessing, God and the angels reveal to him the laws that he and his descendants must observe, such as the Sabbath, purity laws, and the sacred calendar. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays Jacob as the keeper of these laws, in charge of ensuring that his descendants, the future Israelites, obey them as part of their covenant relationship with God. Jesus explained that the laws Jacob receives are part of a cosmic order that governs both heaven and earth. This elevates his role beyond simply inheriting a birthright. He becomes the keeper of God's eternal commandments. Jesus then explained how Jubilees transforms the conflict between Jacob and Esau into a prophetic vision of the ongoing struggle between their descendants. The book implies that the nations descended from Esau will continue to oppose Jacob's descendants throughout history, as Jesus explained. This goes beyond a personal feud between brothers and connects to the concept of a spiritual battle between righteousness and evil. According to Jubilees, Jesus showed me that the spiritual opposition between Israel and Esau's descendants is central to the book's apocalyptic vision, linking the conflict to the end times. Moving on to the birth of Jacob's 12 sons, Jesus explained how Jubilees adds a layer of divine order to these events. According to Jubilees, Jesus stated that the timing and sequence of these births were predetermined by God to coincide with the sacred calendar. Each son was born according to the divine schedule, so their births were part of a larger cosmic plan. Jesus showed me how Jubilees emphasized that the births of the 12 sons had been recorded on heavenly tablets, reinforcing that the 12 tribes were part of God's predetermined plan for the world. When we got to the story of Reuben losing his status as firstborn, Jesus showed us how Jubilees expands on it, emphasizing its spiritual implications and explaining why Judah and Levi rise to prominence. In Jubilees, Jesus explained that Reuben's sin was framed as a violation of divine laws established long ago. His actions are not only a personal flaw, but a spiritual transgression that disqualifies him from leading the tribes. Jesus showed me how Jubilees emphasizes the event's alignment with the cosmic plan. Judah's rise is part of God's eternal law, and Levi is designated for the priesthood. Speaking of Levi, Jesus explained how the Jubilees see his role as the priestly tribe as part of an eternal mandate. According to Jubilees, Levi's priesthood was established in the heavenly tablets long before it was formalized by Moses. Levi was chosen by God to be the spiritual leader of the tribes, Jesus explained, and was responsible for ensuring that the divine laws were followed. His priestly responsibilities are described as part of the cosmic order. Jesus showed me how Jubilees emphasizes that Levi's role was part of God's plan from the start, making the Levitical priesthood more than just a response to historical circumstances, but an essential part of the cosmic order that existed before the events at Mount Sinai. As we move on to the story of Joseph, Jesus explains how Jubilees portrays the brothers' betrayal as a serious violation of divine order with cosmic consequences. In Jubilees, Jesus explained, the act of selling Joseph is described as a major sin against God's heavenly law, with far-reaching consequences. Jesus showed me how Jubilees connects the brothers' actions to Israel's future suffering under Egyptian bondage, laying the groundwork for God's plan to redeem the nation via the Exodus. Regarding Joseph's rise to power, Jesus revealed that, according to Jubilees, it was part of a divine plan written on the heavenly tablets. Jesus explained that Joseph's success in Egypt was due to more than just his abilities. As part of God's plan, he was assigned to save the Israelites. Jesus showed me how Jubilees introduces angels to guide and protect Joseph on his journey. Jubilees describes how God sent angels to protect Joseph from the moment he was sold into slavery, ensuring he fulfilled his destiny in Egypt, as Jesus explained. Jesus explained how Jubilees connects Joseph's life to the Exodus, depicting it as prophetic and foreshadowing the Israelites' enslavement and eventual deliverance. According to Jubilees, Jesus stated that Joseph was aware of his descendants' future bondage and helped prepare them for their eventual deliverance. Moving on to Israel's enslavement in Egypt, Jesus showed me how Jubilees interprets his statement as part of a cosmic prophecy already written on the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained that God foretold Israel's bondage long before it occurred as part of his plan to lead them to the Exodus and the establishment of the Mosaic Law. Jesus explained how Jubilees adds a layer of spiritual warfare to the story, by including angels as key players in the conflict between God and Pharaoh. According to Jubilees, Jesus described Israel's oppression as part of a spiritual battle between good and evil forces. Mastema, a figure associated with Satan, is shown actively working to harden Pharaoh's heart and increase Israel's suffering. Jesus showed me how Jubilees depicts Egypt's plagues as symbolic acts representing the defeat of Egypt's gods and the spiritual forces that drove them. Each plague, Jesus explained, was intended to disempower Egypt's false gods, demonstrating that only the God of Israel possessed true power over heaven and earth. When we talked about Moses receiving the law, Jesus explained how Jubilees adds the detail that these laws were already inscribed on the heavenly tablets long before Moses' time. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained that the heavenly tablets are essentially a cosmic record of all God's laws, established from the beginning of creation. Moses was simply the human recipient of laws that had been established for all time. Jesus demonstrated to me how Jubilees presents the Mosaic Law as part of a cosmic plan, with the laws already written in heaven and waiting for the appropriate time to be revealed to Moses and the Israelites. Jesus showed the Jubilees' belief that they had obeyed the Mosaic Law before Moses, which was fascinating. While the traditional Bible portrays Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as righteous people, Jesus claims it does not state that they were given the entire law. According to Jubilees, the patriarchs were already observing the Sabbath, performing sacrifices, and adhering to many of the laws that Moses would later receive. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays the law as a timeless code given to all righteous people from Adam onward, with Moses simply being chosen to deliver it in its entirety to the nation of Israel. Jesus emphasized that Jubilees are based on the cosmic calendar, with timekeeping, particularly the Sabbath, festivals, and Jubilee years, being central to the divine order. In Jubilees, Jesus explained that following this divine calendar is a way of aligning with the universe's divine rhythm. Jesus showed me how Jubilees warns that deviating from this divine calendar can result in spiritual disorder, which is why timekeeping laws are so important in Mosaic law. This emphasis on the cosmic calendar, Jesus said, is less prominent in the traditional Bible, but Jubilees emphasizes that adhering to this calendar is critical to remaining in God's favor. Jesus explained how Jubilees presents these laws as eternal, binding not only on Israel, but on all generations and even the angels. In Jubilees, Jesus explained that the laws given to Moses are intended to be followed by all of God's creation, including the angels, who are depicted as keeping the Sabbath and celebrating God's festivals in heaven. Jesus demonstrated to me how the Mosaic law becomes part of the universal order in Jubilees, extending beyond humanity and connecting the spiritual and physical realms. Moving on to prophecy, Jesus explained how Jubilees depicts Israel's future as part of a divinely ordained timeline written on heavenly tablets since the beginning of time. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained that everything in human history, from creation to the final judgment, follows a cosmic schedule recorded in heaven. Jesus showed me how Jubilees provides an overview of Israel's journey, explaining that their exile, suffering, and restoration are all recorded in the heavens and must occur in accordance with the divine calendar. Jesus explained how Jubilees highlights the role of angels in the end times, describing how they will descend to separate the righteous from the wicked. As the end of the world approaches, Jesus explained that Jubilees describes how angels will gather those who have kept God's commandments, while Mestama, the leader of evil spirits, will be bound and cast into the abyss. Jesus demonstrated to me how the portrayal of angels as agents of divine justice adds a unique layer to Jubilees' end-of-the-world prophecy. One of the central themes revealed by Jesus in Jubilees is his prophetic vision of Israel's redemption. The book emphasizes, as Jesus stated, that despite Israel's rebellion and exile, God has already determined a time when they will be restored to their land and renewed in their covenant with him. Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents this restoration within a predetermined timeline, with specific events already recorded in the heavenly records. Finally, Jesus explained how Jubilees predicts the arrival of a messianic kingdom, in which God's chosen ruler will establish righteousness on earth. According to Jesus, the Book of Jubilees emphasizes that this kingdom will mark the end of the current age and the beginning of God's eternal reign, in which the law will be upheld and the righteous will inherit the earth. After showing me these revelations from the Book of Jubilees, Jesus looked at me with deep compassion and said, "Now you understand why this book was excluded from most Christian Bibles. It reveals truths that call into question human authority and institutional control of faith." I was overwhelmed by what I had learned, but I had to ask why you were showing me these facts now. Why was I chosen for this revelation? Jesus smiled. The truth has been preserved for those who can see and hear. You've spent your life studying Scripture with an open heart, searching for deeper truths beyond what you were taught. Now you must share what you've learned with others who are eager to hear it. But why was the Book of Jubilees specifically banned? I pressed. For several reasons, Jesus responded. First, it challenged the religious calendars used by Jewish and Christian authorities. The revelation of a divine solar calendar undermined their control over holy days and observances. Second, he explained, it revealed that the law existed long before Moses, demonstrating that God's commandments are eternal and universal, rather than limited to a specific time or culture. These revelations threatened those who wanted to change or selectively enforce these laws. Third, it revealed the role of angels in spiritual warfare in human history, demonstrating that there is more to reality than religious institutions can control or explain. Finally, Jesus stated that it revealed predestination and divine planning that went beyond human understanding, limiting the authority of those who claim to speak for God. Jesus explained that the early church fathers, particularly those at the Council of Nicaea, intentionally excluded books like Jubilees because they contradicted their desire to establish uniform doctrine and practice. According to Jesus, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is one of the few that has preserved this knowledge. Their calendar and traditions are more consistent with the heavenly order than many Western Christian practices. As our time together came to an end, Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. Share what you've learned without fear. Many will reject it just as they did me, but some are ready for the deeper truths. It is time for hidden knowledge to be revealed. With those words, I felt drawn back through the layers of reality. There was a moment of resistance. Though I'd rather stay with him, Jesus said, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Then I felt a sharp jolt as my consciousness reconnected with my physical body. As I took my first breath, I gasped and felt my lungs burning. Disoriented, I found myself on a hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment and worried faces. The attending physician later informed me that I had suffered a massive heart attack. My heart had stopped for 27 minutes, far exceeding the time when most patients can be successfully resuscitated without brain damage. He described my recovery as miraculous and medically inexplicable. In the weeks following my near-death experience, I've struggled to express what Jesus revealed to me. I resigned from my teaching position to concentrate on researching the Book of Jubilees and other excluded texts. What I've discovered only confirms what Jesus has shown me. The Book of Jubilees contains cosmic truths about time, law, and spiritual reality that contradict popular religious beliefs. I formed a small study group to share these revelations with others who are open to them. Some dismiss my experience as a hallucination caused by oxygen deprivation, while others see the profound truth in what I'm saying. The Book of Jubilees is more than just an excluded text. It is a window into God's cosmic plan that was purposefully obscured. Its restoration of our understanding helps us reconnect with the divine rhythms and heavenly laws that have governed creation since its inception. If you've made it this far, perhaps you're meant to learn this information. I urge you to approach the Book of Jubilees with a receptive heart and mind. Seek the deeper truths revealed to me by Jesus, rather than what religious institutions have taught. Remember that God's laws are eternal, having been written on heavenly tablets before the world existed. The divine calendar synchronizes us with cosmic rhythms. Angels exist and play an active role in human affairs. And everything, from creation to the final judgment, is based on a divine plan that existed before time began. This is the truth that was kept from us. This is why the Book of Jubilees was banned. And this is what Jesus asked me to share with you.